Lawin Media Network,
bringing to you the most relevant content across all platforms.
Business, legal, politics, health, lifestyle, and entertainment.
Your source for all the news and updates in the greater Houston community from Texas and all over the world.
Get informed and empowered with Lawin Media Network.
The following program is produced by Lawin Media Network. The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely those of the individuals appearing on the show and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Lawin Media Network, its affiliates, sponsors, or partners. The content provided in this program is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. Lawin Media Network does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or timeliness of the information.
Good evening, everyone, and you're watching Lawin Media Network Live. And welcome to the 4th episode of Pink Table Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Coach Dee. I'm a nurse, a doctorally prepared nurse, educator, mentor, advocate, mother, and domestic violence and trauma survivor. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who helped out last week during the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl and through the power outage. I just wanted to thank all the family and friends for all of their help, assistance, and well wishes and support and prayers. And I just wanted to give my support and prayers to those who are still experiencing the power outage here in the Houston area. Hopefully the power will be restored soon. And so we are just happy and grateful to be back up and running this week with Pink Table Talk. So tonight's episode, I'm really excited about. I told you all on previous episodes that the idea for this show came because of my own personal journey through trauma and my own journey from surviving toxic relationships and narcissistic abuse patterns. One of the avenues that I used in my healing journey was going to support groups that I found online. And one of the most inspirational coaches that I found online was our special guest today, Coach Dee. And I'm so happy to have her with us today. Coach Dee, or Deanna Louise, she is an international master certified life coach. She specializes in life goals, trauma, recovery, and healing from toxic and narcissistic relationships. She is also a practicing licensed clinical addiction specialist with a master's in family therapy. Through her professional brands, Deanna Louise and Coach Dee Consulting LLC, she offers authoring and private coaching practice for personalized one-on-one and group sessions. She was born and raised in New York, and she is celebrated for her warm yet straightforward approach for helping clients achieve transformative growth and healing. In addition to her private practice, she is committed to giving back to her community, and she offers group sessions to up to 1,600 followers on the Circle Up app during the evening hours. As I said before, Coach Dee has been an inspiration, and she's helped me realize the narcissistic patterns that I was dealing with, and she helped me to come through that to the other side. So I'm very happy to welcome her here on the show tonight. So everybody welcome Coach Dee. Hi.
Thank you. So glad to be here, Dr. Carly. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to have you. When I thought about doing a podcast last year, I said, you know, if I ever do a podcast, I got to get Coach Dee on there because she's fantastic. So here we are. Yes.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you. So could you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and where you come from, your upbringing?
Yeah, and I think you did a magnificent intro. Thank you so much. Yes, I was born and reared in New York City. I'm from Brooklyn.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, New York is there. But I currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina, actually.
Okay.
So but New York is my home. That is my home. That's my first love. Charlotte is now my newfound second love. And I have been coaching for a few years now. Do have a therapy background, as you stated, and family therapy. But I enjoy working as a life coach. I enjoy. I'm also a survivor of narcissistic abuse, so I enjoy sharing what I have learned from that, some of the techniques that I have used to get past it. And so it's a real joy to learn about something that has such a profound affect on your life and on your mental health, actually.
Yes.
To be able to give back to people who experience that is a phenomenal joy. I cannot share enough the joy that I get from helping people overcome that. So I thank you for inviting me here today.
Yes, and thank you. And you know, it's such a pleasure listening in on your sessions. You know, you always give us such great information, and I love the straightforward approach that you have. Because for some of us, we're so used to being, you know, the truth twisted. So when you give us that truth straightforward, it's like we're instantly validated, you know. And I always found your sessions to be so validating, so supportive, and it just really helps us to kind of get through, you know, those situations that we might be dealing with. So for our audience, they may not know what narcissism is. I know that they've heard the word and the term being used a lot lately. So could you go ahead and define what narcissism is and what a narcissistic person may present as?
Yes, and I use the term narcissistic personality disorder just from a systemic and medical stance, mental health stance. That's the medical term from the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is the Bible for mental health disorders. So narcissistic personality disorder is a cluster B personality disorder, and people who present with this disorder have what I like to say just a very grandiose way of viewing themselves and everything else. You know,
Yeah.
so they feel entitled. They feel that they are superior to others, and they can be very difficult people to deal with, right? When it comes to presenting with this disorder in narcissistic relationships, you will always see what's called a narcissistic abuse cycle. You know, a cycle of abuse. Narcissistic people present a repeated pattern of behavior, which is very toxic and very difficult to deal with. And so, in order to understand this disorder, you really do have to put some time into researching it. We hear the word narcissism all the time, you know, and any of us can be narcissistic. You know, any of us can feel really, you know, prideful about ourselves. But with narcissistic personality disorder, it goes a lot further in terms of their patterns of behavior, their level of toxicity, the damage that they can create, you know, to their victims. And so it's really important to one, understand a little bit about narcissism, but also understand the language. It has its own language. You know, there are a lot of terms, some of which that are very easy to understand. Some of them are a little bit more complex. Of course, in any relationship, it can be very difficult to recognize patterns of behavior when you're in that relationship. Once you get out of it, of course, hindsight is always 2020.
Yeah.
And also we can identify patterns in other people's relationships, but when it's us, when we're
Yeah.
in it, it's difficult, to identify.
Yes,
So
that's true. Yes. Can you give us some of those terms that
yeah,
are, yes.
yeah. I'll start with the narcissistic. There's so many terms. Like there are terms that are not even owned by narcissism, like gaslighting. That's a
Oh, yeah.
term. We all know what gaslighting is, as a term, but in terms of narcissism, gaslighting is a manipulative ploy
Mm.
that a narcissistic person uses to establish control. So
Wow.
they're always distorting your reality. It looks like a distorted reality.
Wow.
It looks like reframing the conversation altogether. It looks like not answering your questions, directly, but moving on to a completely different topic.
Wow.
It looks like outright lies,
Mhm.
deception, is definitely laced with deceit
Mhm.
and disrespect, because you're basically trying to make someone believe that their reality is not so.
Wow.
You're not hearing right, you're not understanding correctly, you don't have the details of what happened, you're not really understanding what's going on. And so when you're involved with someone like that and they do that on a repeated basis, it actually creates a lot of trauma,
Wow.
which is another term that we all know, and trauma is something that really can be very difficult to let go of, right?
Yes.
We also have a trauma bond, which is a very toxic relationship or connection
Mhm.
to a person that is involving you in a consistent abuse cycle, right?
Wow.
And so you
Mhm.
can, find yourself being abused and developing this bond, basically, which is similar to what you may know of as the Stockholm syndrome.
Mm.
Stockholm syndrome was basically a term that was created out of a bank robbery that happened back in the 70s in Stockholm, Sweden. Some
Mhm.
bank robbers had decided to rob a bank, and unfortunately, it went awry. It didn't go well. So they ended up taking some, captives, and they
Wow.
kept those captives for about 6 days. And
Mhm.
over a period of time, those victims developed a bond
Oh,
with,
wow.
with the captors.
Wow.
And unfortunately, when they were rescued, because of
Mm.
the bond that they created, they developed this emotional attachment. They developed this level of compassion, and none
Mm.
of them wanted to identify, or testify against this
Wow.
robbery. They all were basically seeing the robbers as, human, good people, just like
Yeah.
them. And so they didn't feel a need to testify to have them, arrested. So that's
Wow.
kind of how a trauma bond works. You get into these toxic relationships, you get really emotionally attached to them, and you start to
Mhm.
see some good things, because all toxic relationships have some positives in it, right? So you
Yes.
start to see these positives, and what you start to do is develop a level of compassion for them. So now
Mm.
you're looking at
Wow.
their positives, you're ignoring all their negatives. You're like, well, they're still good people. You're still supporting and encouraging, and they're treating you badly, but at the same time, you develop a closeness with them, and it feels literally like an addiction. It's hard to get away from them. So that's another term, trauma bond. The last one that I would probably mention that I think is really, really important is the narcissistic abuse cycle. That
Yes. Oh,
understanding that cycle
yeah.
is paramount, and it starts with what we call idolization. Uh,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
this is there's four phases to this abuse
Oh,
cycle.
wow.
So
Oh,
you'll notice that in these toxic relationships, you'll be encountering these 4 phases. And not necessarily in order, but you will encounter all four of these phases. The first one being idolization, which is commonly known as love bombing. This is where you're being treated the best. This is the good part of this narcissistic relationship. Be it a lover, it could be your parent, it could be your sibling, it might be your manager at work. It could be your next door neighbor. It could be a platonic friend that you have. You can have this type of relationship with anyone. But in love bombing, they're treating you the best. They're complimenting you. They're making you feel empowered. You actually feel supported. You feel like you've never felt this good in your life. You know. And so they're very strategic with the love bombing phase, because they're really trying to woo you for some reason. If it's very early in the relationship, then most likely the reason is, I'm not going to be able to keep this up for too long, so I need to hook, line, and sinker as fast as I can. And so their relationships kind of move fast. So love bombing happens like that.
Yeah. So we'll get back to the abuse cycle. After the break, we're having a great conversation with Coach Dee. We'll be right back.
Attention, food lovers! Get ready for a brand new culinary adventure with the Commissary Kitchen.
Join us every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Time, or 9 a.m. in the Philippines, for a live show that brings the best of the kitchen straight to your screen.
Presented by Lawin Live Stream and Podcast and produced by Lawin Media Network, we'll explore delicious recipes, share expert cooking tips, and bring you closer to the world of gourmet cuisine.
Don't miss our pilot episode on July 18th.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here on Pink Table Talk, and the show is produced by Lawin Media Network. The show is also available on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google podcast platforms. So be sure to watch us live or to catch our podcast recording later on today. So we're having a hot discussion today about the narcissistic abuse cycle with Coach Dee. So Coach Dee, you just started to explain to us about the love bombing phase. So can you continue on about that for us? Not hearing you. Are you able to adjust your volume?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there we go.
Good morning, everybody. So the love bombing or idolization phase, that's the first phase of the narcissistic abuse cycle. It's the most pleasant phase of this cycle, because that's where you get all the good feels. You get treated right, you get, garnished with all the gifts, you get taken, you get treated really, really well. So well that you're probably going to feel like you've never been treated this well, ever before. Now, once you get to, know this person a little bit better, that's at the beginning of the relationship. Love bombing still looks really, really good, but not as good as that first time. That first time is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. You are placed on a pedestal, right? This is men and women. You are placed on a pedestal, because narcissists can be men or women, right? The second phase typically, and the reason why they're treating you so well is because they just think you're perfect. They truly think that you're a perfect person for them. You look perfect, you act perfect, you sound perfect, you know, they will try to mirror you though during this phase. So you may even think that they like the same things that you like. You know, they will intentionally, act as though they like everything about you, everything that you like, including the food, your style of dress, whatever. They're going to mirror everything, because they want to woo you and pull you in. The second phase of the abuse cycle is typically when something happens where maybe you criticize them, maybe you disagree with them, maybe you're, not really feeling in sync with them, as you once did. And so what happens is the second phase is called the devaluation. This is the phase of the relationship where it's very painful, because this is where you are devalued. This is where the vile comments, are told to you. This is where the name calling begins. This is where any of your past secrets that you've shared, now your traumas, now they get thrown in your face, your insecurities. This is where they get brought up. And you're basically treated in a very, very condescending way, right? And the reason is because the narcissistic person is always looking to establish control in the relationship. So when you don't go along with them, you disagree with them, you criticize them, they feel like they're losing their control. And so this is one of the ways that they seek to reestablish it. If they are not successful, we go to phase 3, which is the discard. And this is the phase that most people remember the most. And the abuse cycle is when that narcissistic person shuts off all communication. They ghost you, they disappear, they block you everywhere, they're not talking to you, they're not responding to calls, text messages, nothing. It's like they fell off the face of the earth. And so it even feels like silent treatment. If we are under the same roof, it's like silent treatment. And basically the design behind the third phase, the discard, is to punish you because you're not complying with what they want. You're not getting back in order and understanding, that they are in charge, that, they control the power in the relationship. And you're not moving to that subordinate or submissive place, right? So that's the point of the discard. The last phase, which is the Hoover phase, which is named after vacuum cleaner Hoover, is basically the back in a relationship, because now that you've been discarded and you're undergoing silent treatment and you've been punished, the narcissistic person realizes that they're missing something. All narcissistic people are in transactional relationships for some that you provide to them, right? They're not in emotionally charged, connected relationships. They're in transactional relationships. So if you've been discarded, they're probably realizing that they're missing something that you provide. And so in order to get it back, now it's time to Hoover you. It's time to be a little nice again, calm, relax, all the discard, all the blocks. You've been on blocks now. Now we're ready to talk. Open up the door, for you to come back. And that's the Hoover phase, because they're missing something, and what happens is it goes right back to love bombing again, and you repeat the same cycle over and over again. So that's the abuse cycle.
Thank you. That was such a great description of that cycle. And I can definitely see the correlation, similarities between addiction, like you said. You described how the love bombing, they get that high, and then it just keeps cycling. They get it hooked onto the person and that affection, and they just keep wanting more. We have a question from our audience member, Jewel Bakani. She says, "Hi, Dr. Dee and Coach Dee. What are the key differences between narcissism and healthy self-esteem? And how can one distinguish between self-confidence and narcissistic behavior in everyday interactions? Wow, that's a really great question.
That's a really good question. Narcissism, number one, we all can be narcissistic, right? We all can have a good sense of self. We all can even have a high self-esteem, where you will be definitely confident. Narcissistic behavior, on the other hand, is a very negative thing because it involves what I just mentioned, the abuse cycle, right? The one thing that is very unhealthy about narcissistic people is they don't communicate very well. They don't communicate in healthy ways. So when you think of a narcissistic person, they're not talking with you. They pretty much, for the most part, will be talking at you. So the conversation feels condescending. It feels pressured. You know, you feel anxious in the conversation. You feel confused from the gaslighting that they do. That is not going to promote healthy self-esteem, right? So your self-worth is what will promote healthy self-esteem. You know, your values, the things that you stand on, setting healthy boundaries for yourself to make sure that you feel safe in a relationship, that you feel protected in a relationship. In a narcissistic relationship with narcissistic behavior, you are not going to feel safe in that relationship. You're not going to feel healthy.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's a very good question. I also have a question. Oftentimes people in these narcissistic cycles, they feel that they are the narcissist. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes. Many times what happens with the victim is, for one, you don't realize when you're in a narcissistic relationship that the person is gaslighting you. So you really want to believe everything that they say, you know, and a lot of times you will be accused of it, you know, because many victims, they learn about it, then they run to their partners or their family and they'll say, "You're narcissistic." I know you're gaslighting me, you know. I know what you did last week was a discard, you know. I know you're punishing me, you know. And so the narcissist is not foolish, you know. They're pretty bright people. They're deceiving, but they're not dumb, right? So what they'll do is they will gaslight you into believing that you're the one with the problem, you know.
Wow.
So what happens to the victim, because of that trauma bond, that addiction, you know, they're emotionally addicted to a toxic person because they're going through that cycle and they're holding on to the love bombing phases because it feels good. It gives them encouragement to hold on. When they go through the bad phases, they still want to hang in there, right? And so the narcissistic person knows that. And so what they do is they will continue to manipulate you. They will continue to try to establish control and create all this confusion and anxiety in you, so that you really are, you have a distorted reality is what we call it. They distort your reality. That's the purpose of gaslighting. It is to distort what's really happening, right? And so now you're questioning yourself. You don't, they're encouraging you to question yourself. And they're probably going to tell you, "I'm not gaslighting you. You're gaslighting me. You're the narcissist. The whole family is not." They will, what we call, create a blame shift. They'll shift the blame. They'll project their behaviors onto you. They'll deflect the conversation and create what we call word salad, where you know, you're talking about 5 different things and you never really speak to the topic. You know, like when a narcissist gaslights you, you ask them a straight, concrete yes, no answer. They start talking about something completely different. Never answer the question. You know, all this is by design. So yeah, that's how it works with a narcissist.
Wow, totally mind blowing. We have another comment. Jewel Bakani said, "Great to know and thank you." Yes, we're going to go take our second break for the evening, and then we'll be back with Coach Dee.
All right.
In a world filled with fleeting moments, there's beauty waiting to be captured. My name is Christian, and I specialize in immortalizing your most precious memories, from elegant weddings to vibrant events and timeless portraits. I'm here to make every moment unforgettable. Let me tell your story through the lens. Contact me today.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Pink Table Talk. We're here tonight with Coach Dee, and we're talking about narcissism and the narcissistic abuse cycle. So Coach Dee has just explained to us the different stages of the narcissistic abuse cycle, as well as the difference between narcissism and healthy self-esteem. So Coach Dee, my next question for you is, what type of persons are more susceptible to narcissistic personality types?
Oh, wow. I get that question a lot. A narcissist can be attracted to any type of person, but they particularly like people who are really on top of their game.
Wow.
Very successful people, because remember, they have a grandiose personality, right? So they feel entitled to the best things, and they like being around the best. They like being associated with the best. So when you're on top of your game and you really have a lot going on, the narcissistic person is attracted to that, because you might improve my brand, right? You might extend me. So yeah, I could use you, Remember, they get into transactional relationships. They're always thinking about what you can do for them, know. So it's really interesting because they also like what we call empaths, very caring, very sharing, willing to help someone, willing to build them and support and encourage. They like that type of thing because you're probably going to be more, likable. If they have any problems or anything, you're probably going to be one that would like to fix it. Empaths can be Mr. and Miss Fix It on occasions. So they like people who really present well. They like to know how to present well. So that's how I would answer that question.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's good to know, because I feel that that's something a lot of people wonder, they ask themselves, how did I get into this situation? How did I end up with this type of personality? Whether it's in relationships, and like you said, it can be men and women. So the empath personality, they are the caring person. So it makes sense that they would look for that, because they want someone to overlook their flaws and their issues.
Exactly.
What other types of narcissistic dynamics can people come across, say, for instance, in families or work relationships? Can you give us some other examples of where we may see the narcissistic cycle played out?
Yeah, you definitely can see it on the job, in the workforce. The narcissistic person is a very domineering personality. So they want to be in charge, right? So you can have narcissistic coworkers, you could have a narcissistic manager that basically just wants you to do what you're told. They don't really care about your feedback. They don't want it. They're not interested in your ideas and how you're going to make things better, because I already know how to make it better. I've already got it together. Follow the plan. So they present this attitude where just do as I say, basically. I'm not interested in your ideas. I'm not interested in how you think you can make this better, because I know what's best. They always think they know more than everyone else. And so you run into problems like that on the job, especially, the person that's really, again, they're attracted to you because you're good at what you do. You're really on top of your job, but maybe you want to, progress up the ladder in your company. Well, the narcissistic manager just wants you to do what you're told. Doesn't want you trying to get out of the role that they have you in. They're not really trying to help you progress. They want you to stay right where you are, Just do what you're told every day. Don't give me any opinions. Don't go against anything that I say. Just go along with whatever I say, and you're the perfect employee. You're the
Wow.
perfect employee. Yeah. And you could actually end up getting promoted that way if you know how to go along and do exactly what they say. You know, it's very dictatorship type of energy that you're going to find with narcissistic people.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Especially, I feel that personality type does end up being in leadership, because I've definitely come across that in my career more than once.
We have different flavors. We do have different flavors. So now, you know, those coverts, I mean, they can be very successful. They can be the president of the United States. They can be a neurosurgeon. You know, they can be in high places, you know. But then we have the coverts that are, you know, a little bit more insecure, a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more unorganized, and they need you to kind of organize their life for them. You know, so they're not all in leadership, but many of them are.
Wow, that's so interesting. We have a question here from one of our audience members, Brian Wong. He says he's watching on YouTube Live. His friend is in a relationship with her partner who often talks about his achievements and seems to need constant admiration. His friend is starting to feel that her partner's behavior might be affecting their relationship negatively. What steps can his friend take to communicate her feelings about her partner's behavior and without confrontation? So that's very good. Very good question.
Yeah, that's a good question, because if the person is narcissistic, they don't want to be confronted. So that's the first thing. It's very difficult to confront if you feel that they're behaving in a negative way. They're not going to be receptive to it. You know, narcissistic people don't really have the best communication skills, you know, or the maturity that's needed to have both expressive and receptive communication. They're dictators, so they're expressing. They're not really listening to what you're saying, nor are they interested in what you're saying. So it is difficult. What I would say, and what I do say to clients who have to deal with narcissistic people and they're trying to look for a way to communicate, one, do set your boundaries. Keep your communication very brief and concise, because they're not listening. So if you ramble on saying too much, you lost them. Make sure it's brief, like really, it needs to be real brief and to the point. Stick to your boundaries. And in terms of responding to them, because a lot of time they can be very negative, we use a communication technique called gray rock, where you're communicating with them without emotion, right? That's the number one thing. You want to keep the emotion down. You want to get to a place of indifference, not only in your behavior, but in your mindset, you know. And I tell people when they say, well, how do I remember what indifference is? I say, think of it this way. You got 3 words to help you remember what indifference is. Indifference is, I don't care. That's what indifference is. I don't care. I don't care about what you're talking about, what you're doing, what you're asking me for. It's having a non-emotional approach to the communication. Gray rocking is similarly, it's in a different way to communicate, where it's brief, but there's no emotional talk. There's no what I call behavior talk. We no longer talk about your behavior, your opinion of me, my opinion. We do more transactional conversations. You know, when you're dealing with narcissistic people, unfortunately, that's where it has to go. It has to be, you know, if you share children, we're talking about the children. We're not talking about how I would like you to get better or how I would like you to view something that's important to me, because narcissistic people lack that ability to have empathy. So you have to be careful in how you communicate with them. So I usually say gray rock. Think of a beautiful pasture of flowers being so colorful. Then there's that big, beautiful gray rock sitting in the middle. It exudes just as much energy as the flowers, but it's a relaxed energy, right? It's not a bubbly energy like the flowers. So you need to get rid of your bubbly. You have to get relaxed, let go of all the emotions, just get brief, concise, and straight to the point.
Yes. And for me, that was one of the things that you taught me when I was listening into one of your groups was the gray rock. Me being a very emotive person and a person, I think I do fall along the empathic spectrum where I care about emotions. I care about feelings, and I love to have discussions about my feelings and emotions and a lot of this behavior talk that you're talking about. The narcissistic person I was dealing with, I would have these conversations about their behavior and how it made me feel. And it only seemed to ignite the problems and their rage. So when you talked about the gray rock, I said, oh, that makes so much sense. And so I started to leave out, those emotions and just be business, and that really helped to change the game as far as how I felt with the interactions. The gray rock, it angered that person, because they want all that emotive talk. They want you to be overly reactive, So for me, that was just such a aha moment and such a great tactic to learn. And before our next break, I wanted you to talk to us about what no contact is, because I know gray rock is one method to use with a narcissistic personality, but so is no contact. Can you talk to our audience about what that means?
Yeah, no contact. Actually, no contact is when you're trying to get out, right? And a lot of people confuse this with the discard phase of the narcissistic abuse cycle, but it's different. No contact is when you cut off all communication because you want out of this relationship. And the reason you cut off all the communication is because you want to take away their ability to gaslight and be more deceptive and create more trauma in you. Which is going to happen if you're still communicating with them. If you're still communicating with them on a regular, they're going to continue to create anxiety. They're going to continue to create confusion. They're going to continue to create insecurity. They're going to triangulate you with a third party. And the reason they do all of it, and they're going to isolate you from all your family and friends. And they do all of these things for one primary reason: to have control over you. Really, that's really the only reason, So the no contact prohibits them from being able to do that. So that is why if you go no contact with a narcissistic person, you have completely dismantled them. They are not able to function if you go no contact, and they are going to try to hoover you back in, and try to start that abuse cycle all over again. So you have to, if you do go no contact, you do have to have a strategy. You have to know that a narcissistic person, they are relentless. You cannot out manipulate these master manipulators. They are relentless in getting you back. And so if you go contact, you actually need a strategy on what are you going to do when they try to break the no contact, because they are going to do that. So you need to plan for that. You need to plan for the pop-ups at your house. You need to plan for them calling, texting, emailing, or reaching out social media through, these new accounts that you've never heard of. Alias accounts is what I call them. You're going to get alias communications. So just be prepared for that.
Wow. Oh, this is so good. We're going to take another break. And when we come back, we are going to continue this conversation about getting out of a narcissistic abuse cycle and relationship. So stay tuned. back, everybody. And we're here tonight with Coach Dee, and we're talking about narcissistic abuse cycle and relationships. So before we went on our break, we were talking about no contact and how a person can break free from a narcissistic person or family member, because you can find yourself dealing with family and not just romantic situations. So Coach Dee, what are some other ways if a person does find themselves in this cycle, how can they break free?
Yeah, I will say this. The number one cause of relationships breaking down is communication. How you communicate to this narcissistic person is it's crucial to know how to communicate with them. If you're trying to get out, the best way to get out is to go no contact, but you do need to strategize. You need to plan that. You might not be able to go no contact today, but you can start to pay attention to the narcissistic behavior that you are encountering in this relationship. It's important to learn everything you can. That is what helps you get out, and it helps you stay out. I often tell my clients that are still in, now's the time for you to put all the narcissistic information that you have to the test, because you need to know without a shadow of a doubt what you're dealing with, because it encourages you to get out. You also want to journal, and you want to make checklists of everything they've done. Everything that they've done, you need to write it down. And the reason you want to do this is because a lot of people leave narcissistic relationships and they go right back in. And they leave again and they go right back in. And psychology says you'll do that approximately 6 times on average in a narcissistic relationship. Yes. And so what you want to do is minimize that. You don't want to be going back. That checklist is going to, when you start to feel like, oh, I miss them in my bed, I can't live without them, blah, blah, blah. You know, I hear it all the time, you know, and these are real feelings. You actually start to feel like you're missing the routine. Of course, you're not missing the toxic person. You're not missing the toxic behavior. You're missing the idolization, the love bombing, you know, and all the niceties that you got in the relationship. And so you are tempted to go back sometimes. That checklist is going to help you, because at this point, you're distorting your own reality, thinking you want them, because they're only going to suck you back into another abuse cycle, right? So with the checklist, that can help you. That can help you stay in reality. It can help you break that distortion that this is my reality. This is why I left. And this is why I don't need to go back, you know. Just understand that when you learn about narcissism and you actually put it to the test while you're still in it, it will actually make you stronger in terms of planning your exit strategy and getting out and staying out for good.
Wow, that's so great, Coach Dee, and what a great technique. And I remember you talking about this last year, and that's actually a technique that I used. You know, I had to write everything down. And I think we talked about this before, where it's like when you find yourself in these situations, it's almost like you have an amnesia to what they've done to you. It's like you forget about it. And I kind of relate this to how, like, a woman in labor, you know, you've given birth. And after you've given birth, you forget about all that pain that you just went through. And that's kind of what happens to a victim of narcissistic abuse is they may leave, they start feeling good again, and then all the good memories come back and they forget about all that pain that they endured. And so they go right back. You know, making that list can kind of be that reminder, like, oh no, I remember they, you know, punched holes in the walls and they lied, they cheated, you know, all of those things can kind of keep us back to reality. So I think that that's really important. And then one thing I wanted to also ask is, so once a person does go no contact or does go gray rock, there can be some side effects to that. This can anger the narcissist. So how does one deal with their reaction, that anger that they're going to have once you do go no contact or gray rock them?
Yeah, I often encourage people to build a strong cycle of a support system. And oftentimes in narcissistic relationships, you'll find that the person has become completely isolated. They don't really have a whole lot of friends or family around locally, that can help them. So when you're planning to do things, do things in numbers. Like if they need to come pick their stuff up from the house because they're moving out, have someone in that house when they come to pick it up. If they're the malignant type, that's prone to domestic violence, have a police escort, get a restraining order if you need to get one to make sure that you're able to maintain the no contact, especially if they've been malignant. So there's other things that you want to be thinking about, how to strategize to keep them away, knowing that their pattern. By the time you decide to leave a narcissistic person, their pattern. If they're the type that will just show up at your door. Wow. If they're the type that are going to try to get into a toxic tennis match over text, because you've been with them, so many times. So start to take note of these patterns so that when they show up again, you can foreshadow their behavior. Ahead of time what's about to happen, and you can get in front of it and learn everything you can. Learn everything you can about narcissism so that you can pick up on these behaviors, and again, you pick up on these behaviors before you get out, you have a higher chance of staying out because you fully understand what you're dealing with, but someone who learns after they get out, sometimes I feel like they're at a disadvantage because you're questioning a lot of things. You didn't get a chance to kind of, put things to the test, and now maybe you're not in communication as much, so you're not sure. And you will question yourself. You will question yourself if you made the right decision. And again, that's where the journaling and the checklist come in. It's major trauma. So I encourage everyone to get a therapist. If you feel like you're at a healthy place and you don't have additional layers to peel back, get yourself a coach that understands narcissistic abuse, that can help you kind of walk through this process and be successful.
That's great. And my last question for you tonight is, so now the person has left the narcissist, they've gone no contact, and here comes the smear campaign. Can you describe to our audience what that looks like and what it is?
Yeah, smear campaigning can happen during a breakup. It can happen when it's finally over. What a smear campaign is basically the narcissistic people enlist. They have people that they enlist to carry out their work for them because they have they can't access you. You've cut off all the access. They're angry about it. They got to find a way to get to you. So they're going to call auntie, or their best friend's going to call you on the phone because they know they can't call you. So the best friend will call and try to check in, see if they can get some information. And what the narcissistic person will do is they will also reach out to people that you guys have in common, and they'll just start talking. They'll start fishing, trying to see if they can get some information, and they'll start saying negative things about you and how you are, what you've done. You've left them, and you've left them destitute. You kicked them out the house, and they don't have nowhere to go. And now he's almost homeless, and this, that, and the other thing. Just so that they can get that negative narrative spread around, hoping, and it's really so that the folks that are part of the smear campaign, that they look at you a certain way. Now they look down on you, and it's successful a lot of times because people develop a very low self-esteem in these narcissistic relationships. And so you actually believe all of this negative information that the narcissistic person really believes that about you, when in most cases they don't. They're not really dumb. They know that you're smart. They know that you're bright. They know that, you know, you have a lot going on. They just want control. And they will move, you know, in very egregious ways. You know, they will go to the lowest of the low, you know, to accomplish that simple goal. I just want control over the person again. So I'll say what I need to say to whomever I need to say and hope that it gets back to you, you know, to try to deter you, to try to either make you look bad or maybe, you know, convey you to come back.
Yes. Wow. Wow. These people are just, they're really so toxic, and the levels they go, it's just too much. But wow, I'm glad that we have some tactics and some tools and resources that we can use to break free and to live healthy and happy again. Coach Dee, how can our audience get in touch with you? Or if anybody is struggling with a narcissistic abuse cycle, how can they get some help from you?
Yes, I do have a private practice. I do have Linktree on my Instagram page. So if you are on Instagram, please reach out to me. My IG tag is @Iam.CoachD. You can also reach me by email, coachdconsulting@gmail.com. You can always, you know, drop me a line there or schedule some time with me, and I'll be more than happy to walk you through it because it's a lot.
It is. You know, I started this journey years ago, and I'm still learning and still coming out of it because being in it, you know, you just get buried. And that's the only way I can kind of describe it as. It's like you're buried by layer by layer by layer. And when you come out of it, you have to have someone help you kind of peel each layer. And just when you think you've gotten free and you've removed this cycle thinking or this toxic thinking, there's still more. So you need to have someone such as yourself to kind of help guide people and get through those layers and to truly become free and healthy again. So I thank you so much, Coach Dee, for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I've absolutely enjoyed this conversation with you. And like I said, I thank you again. You helped me see the light and helped me through many a days. So I just thank you so much, and I appreciate you. And to my audience, please reach out to her if you are going through any of those struggles and you need some guidance and some help and some one-on-one. Please reach out to Coach Dee. Thank you all again for joining us tonight. And be sure to stay tuned and watch us every Wednesday. On Wednesdays, we talk pink. And thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank you.